This was a gathering that was organized by the International Committee for the Preservation of Har HaZeitim, which was founded in the year of May 2010. The purpose of it is to secure and to restore much of the destruction that has taken place on Har HaZeitim there. There were approximately 225,000 graves there before the Jordanian rule. The Jordanians destroyed 75,000 graves, which is the largest destruction ever recorded in history. Even the Nazis destroyed 12,000 in their efforts across Europe. Our goal is basically to, as we already started to do, to increase the security through the installation of cameras, through the deployment of a police station, to seal some of the breaches in the wall where some of these vandals are coming through, to provide security to the access of Har HaZeitim. Because unlike all the heritage places in Israel, this is a functioning cemetery. People come, they have relatives there, they come to pray every day. There are levayot that take place there every day. So we're not just talking about securing the dead, we're talking about securing the living. And this has been a problem. And through our committee, which has galvanized Jewish leadership from across the spectrum, including Malcolm Hoenlein from the President's Conference, we hope that we will begin to change. We believe that we have begun to change the focus of the entire country here, to look towards Har HaZeitim, to look towards perpetuating it, and we are committed to see this program through to the end.
The question can legitimately be raised: why does it matter? Who cares? I mean, the people there, do they care? The answer is, in Jewish tradition, there's no greater mitzvah than dealing with the needs of those who are not able to deal with their own. The mitzvah of Meis Mitzvah, of the dead, of Kavod HaMeis, of the dignity of the dead, doesn't end with a funeral. It only begins there. The responsibility is ageless. It's timeless. It means that all generations have a responsibility to the future and in the future, to take care of those of our forefathers and foremothers, of our ancestors, great and not great. The fact that a prime minister, that Zachariah, Malachi, and Haggai are buried there is not what makes it sacred. It's because of all the tens of thousands of others who are buried there as well. If such a desecration were to have taken place, or would take place today in Europe, we would be protesting. We would be lobbying governments. We would be demanding a change. 3,000 years of Jewish tradition make it important for us to protect this unique site. Its history, its uniqueness in Jewish history, from the time when there was called the Mountain of Anointment, because the Shemen HaMishcha, the anointing oil, was taken from the olive trees that grew there. From the burial caves and sites which 3,000 years ago provided burial places for our ancestors and are long gone. The history of this mountain, second only to Har HaBayis in Jewish tradition. We know that Parah Adumah, we know that many other sacred rites took place there, and that when Jews couldn't go to the Har HaBayis, they went to Har HaZeitim in order to carry out the mitzvot and to be Ola Regel, even though they couldn't go to Beit HaMikdash anymore. In Jordan, a few months ago, there was a conference, a group called ISESCO. It stands for an association of people involved in economic, social, cultural activities in the Arab world, the Muslim world. Representatives of 40 countries gathered in Amman. Amman is incidental to the gathering, it was just a location. But the agenda there, with representatives of UNESCO in attendance, to declare that Kever Rachel, Har HaBayit, and Marat HaMachpelah were not Jewish holy sites. Kever Rachel is now listed in UNESCO declarations as a mosque named for Muhammad's driver, even though Muhammad never visited the Holy Land in his lifetime, / Kutab Rachel. In every document of the Arab League, in every document of the League of Nations, the United Nations until 2000 was called Rachel's tomb, Kutab Rachel. No one ever laid claim to it. Today it's declared a mosque, as well as Rachel's tomb. To deny, as you heard before, the Judeo-Christian tradition of Har HaBayit, to deny the existence of the temples, to say that this was Al-Burak's wall, named for Muhammad's horse, and not the Kotel, to deny the Jewish claim at Marat HaMachpelah. I do not believe this is a religious issue, and it should not be a religious war. This is a war about our future, because they understand better than us that if you take away our past, you take away our future. For Jews, we look back not to get lost in history like the fundamentalists, but to have it as a guide to the future. We learn the lessons of the past. We derive the guidance about what we must do by reading every year Sefer Bereshit and Sefer Shemos and the whole Torah. Why every year? Doesn't it get boring? The answer is you learn new lessons every year. There isn't a single parasha that can't teach you something about contemporary times. So we look back in order to look forward. We look to our past because we understand it's a guide to how we meet the challenges of tomorrow. Winston Churchill once said, the further back you look, the further ahead you will see. Our Chazal, our sages said it 1,000 years earlier, that we cannot be cut off from our past. Because if in fact, and people can be dismissive of the significance of these developments, but the fact is that if you cut us off from these past ties, what right do we have to be here in the future? Har HaZeitim is a critical element of this campaign. It's a campaign to deny us our past, to deny us our roots, to deny us our history. Har HaZeitim's history is the history of Jerusalem, the history of Israel, the history of the Jewish people. It can never be severed from us. It must never be severed from us. People make light of the stoning incidents. I admit, I read about them, I don't pay much attention to it. Until yesterday, together with Congressman Engel and Congressman Nadler and Richard Stone and a delegation, when we were there visiting the graves of Har HaZeitim, we came under rocks being thrown at us. And when you see the size of the rocks, you understand that rocks, like words, can kill, and do kill. So the words are important, just as the rocks are important. They're important for us. How are we to teach our young to respect us if we show no respect for past generations? If we don't maintain the sanctity of a place like Har HaZeitim, how can we ever talk about the unity of Jerusalem? You divide and you lose Har HaZeitim, you lose the unity of Jerusalem. And that must never be. Even in the Oslo Accords, it made clear that it would not come under Palestinian authority. The Jews would have full access, which was denied to us all the years under the Jordanian control. So for us, this is a battle not just about the past, but more importantly, about the future. It's true at Keren Ophel and many other places that are being neglected, places of vital interest to Jewish history, vital significance to the Jewish state, and unfortunately they are not paid attention, and we see that they are being raped and taken away from us. It cannot be allowed. It is what we will be judged for generations to come. You know, we judge a generation of 70 years ago and ask, what did they do? They say they didn't know. It was a lie. They didn't want to know. We know from all the archives that are being opened that they knew every day how many Jews were being killed. Future generations will judge us that we were given the generation that was given the miracle of the return to Israel, of Yerushalayim being returned to Jewish sovereignty. We will be judged. We cannot hide behind a cloak of ignorance because we know everything. All the information is available to us. The question is, what do we do about it? Read what Lenny Ben David has been publishing in the Jerusalem Post on the history, generally, but more particularly in this past week, about Har HaZeitim, to understand its significance through the ages. We owe hakaras hatov to this government and this Knesset for the steps that have been taken. For the first time, there are cameras being put up. We have worked now for a couple of years. It took time to get people's attention, but it must be sped up. We cannot allow delays. There are people sitting there monitoring it, but when they send the alarm, by the time the police come, it's too late. We saw how fast it occurs when the rocks were thrown at us and police were standing there, and by the time they just got out of the cars and were able to deploy, the perpetrator was long gone. The substation at the Seven Arches at the former Intercontinental Hotel, is vital. And the news that Danny Ayalon brought that within 2 weeks it will be operative is wonderful news. I wish that this had been done many years ago. The 90 cameras must be upgraded and to 137 that were promised and even more. And we cannot continue to allow the desecration, the breach in the wall that allows vandals to come in. Simple steps that could be taken in some word to close off some of the access roads so the donkey races that take place on Har HaBayis at night, even now, must stop. And that the illegal construction of the mosque should have been stopped. Perhaps now is too late, but it's not too late to prevent other acts of land grabs on the Har HaBayis itself, on the Har HaZeisim itself. The government needs to legislate. We need to have laws like we have in 35 states that holds people accountable, increases the punishment, and even for minors, there must be punishment, and the parents must be held accountable for the children engaged in these acts. This is not a political issue, as I said. This is much more serious. And we should not fight it over others, but over our responsibility. You know, Martin Luther King once said, we will not be judged by the attacks of our enemies, but by the silence of our friends. The judgment about Har HaZeisim will not be about what others did to us, but what we did or failed to do. And I think that that is the critical challenge. Moshe Rabbeinu told us in the mitzvah of Hakel that the greatest challenges to the Jewish people are not external enemies or wars or natural disasters. It's apathy, indifference, and ignorance. Those are the three challenges we could not overcome. So first we have to do an educational job, and I thank the committee for what they have done both here in Israel and abroad. We have to educate people about the history, about the reality, about the current reality, and what can be done. So they build pressure. We have to educate members of the Knesset and elected officials, because they don't know. And I can tell you that everyone that we brought into responded immediately. I know that they have many demands on them. So we have to make sure that this is high on their priority list. We have to educate our young. As they said, take people up there. Let them see the reality. Look at the history, the great Rabbanim, the Rashash, and so many others from every community who are buried there. Rav Kook, Nachum Begin, Henrietta Zold. The list is endless of those whose graves are there and whose dignity must be protected. Every shovel going into the ground now in Yerushalayim is uncovering our past. Why was it that this generation, of all generations, was given this privilege, that we would see Yerushalayim uncovered, that you can go from Mei Shiloach to the Kotel underground, that you see where people were Olam Regel, you can walk the same walk, you can see the same things, we're seeing discoveries, like the little rock with the picture of the menorah for the first time that we see an eyewitness account, or the little gold bell that hung on the bottom of a gown, perhaps of a Kohen Gadol or a Kohen, as he walked over into the Beit HaMikdash. Think of what your grandparents or their grandparents would have done to see one of the things that we see every day and take for granted. That every time there is a discovery, everywhere, at the Kotel, at the Yirat David, all over Yerushalayim as they built this light railroad, new things coming to the fore that were denied for 2,000 years to us. Even when Arafat desecrated the Har HaBayis and opened up the seal of 2,000 years. That all the bones that were found, not one non-kosher bone, that all the stuff still sitting in the Jerusalem forest that they're going through, the hundreds of tons of debris that has yielded so much, including a silver coin with the name Eliyahu on it, and the burn marks from the destruction of the temple. We are rediscovering our past. The Bible is now a GPS in Yerushalayim. You open any page and you go around and you see it all coming to life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending us a message, reminding us of our past, to remind us of our responsibilities to the future, to appreciate the miracles this generation has had. And the way we show it is by our responsibility, by the way we act, by making sure that we take proper care of these things, which are a morashah. This is an inheritance for future generations. It's only given to us in trust. It's not for us to waste. And those generations will judge us forever by what we do. I hope that this effort will be the beginning, not the end. That we will all live up to the responsibility so that future generations will look back and they will thank you and praise you for preserving their past and their future.
The cemetery in Har HaZeitim is one of the most sacred places. This is where we are so much connected. I must tell you here that I also have a personal connection with the Har HaZeitim, not just a national one, because my great-grandparents, Mordechai and Perla Sigelov, are buried there. And I think that for every Israeli, what is happening now in Har HaZeitim is totally unacceptable. It's totally a shame. And this is why it is so important for this association for the preservation of Har HaZeitim. Your work is so very important, and it's going to be helped also by the government. It is the government's responsibility and duty to exercise our sovereignty on every inch of our territorial land. Most of it, So I spoke today with Mr. Yitzhak Aharonovich, which is the Minister of Homeland Security, and he's also in charge for the protection of Har HaZeitim. He told me, Malcolm, the Lord who spoke to you, by the way, he told me that they have already a concrete plan in 2 weeks, no more than 2 weeks, to build there a station, a fixture there, a permanent police station, not just a police presence anymore, but a permanent station which will start with 25, 26 policemen, and if this doesn't help, we will do more. But there is not going to be any more to see that, first of all, the graves are not protected and honored, or that people who come and visit the cemetery are not protected and honored. I think this is our sacred oath to ourselves and to the future. And again, it is a great pleasure to see all of you here, and when we see such great interest on cemeteries and graves, some of them are 3,000 years old, we know that there's no people like the Jewish people in understanding, in honoring the past, in building a future. And just let me finish with a semi-political observation. We will make peace with all our adversaries when they will stop the ideological warfare, when they will stop denying our future, when they will stop trying erasing our past, as they are trying to do on Har HaZeitim. We will have peace with them when they will understand that we are here at our homeland, and we are willing to live in peace with all the neighbors. Our hand is extended in peace, and our hand is not empty. We can help them a lot in meeting the challenges of the future here in the Middle East and beyond. But peace will come only from recognition that we are the Jewish state. Nobody is doing us any favor by recognizing us as a Jewish state. This is what we are. Just as we are willing to respect somebody else's right for self-determination, they have to allow us the decency of respecting our right for self-determination. And we are Jewish, democratic state. This is what we have been. This is what we'll always be. When they understand that, all the other issues will be secondary. And until and unless they are willing to make the necessary adjustments and compromises, we are here, and Lo Alman Israel, we will continue to defend ourselves by ourselves. We're going to preserve this right and capability to defend ourselves by ourselves, and we will continue to develop and build our future here as we have been. And we can be very proud of what we have achieved, and we can be also very optimistic about the future. Thank you very much.